Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Chicane Cafe. Grab your favorite beverage and join your hosts, Nadia and Ashley, this week while we dive into all things Formula One. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Chicane Cafe for the China Grand Prix this weekend. We're going to talk about our prediction results, which teams adapted really well to the new sprint format for this weekend. A few different penalties, both safety car and collision based, and also some honorable mentions for some good drives this weekend.
Yes. So Nadia, hello. Good afternoon.
Hi.
First question for you. Did you stay up to watch the race? You did.
Oh, yes. I absolutely did. I stayed up for the whole race. And it was actually like pretty engaging the whole time. So it wasn't too bad until like right near the end. And then I was like, I'm so tired. So
That's
did
good.
you stay up for the race?
Yeah, I couldn't really sleep. And so I was already up at like 2:30, so I figured I'll just go downstairs and turn on the race. So it ended up working out really well, but similar to you, I think it was about lap 46, I think I was slowly closing my eyes. I was resting my eyes at that point. But I did finish the race, and then as soon as it was done, just went to bed. But yeah, similar to you, it was a really good race. I mean, for the first 15 laps, I want to say until about this safety car. It was like, okay, we know where this is going. And then the safety car happened, and then there was like a full-on re-engagement.
I will say I'm very much looking forward to the next Grand Prix in Miami because that will be during the day. And I will feel more functional to watch and analyze what's going on during the race.
Yes. And be able to keep the sprint qualifying, the sprint, the qualifying, and the race all very separate from one another, which I think was a big challenge this weekend as well.
Yes, exactly. Partially the late hour, partially the first time we're in this new format. So the next time I hope will be a little bit easier to keep everything all straight. We should talk about our predictions. So I said I got them correct if I got them in the right place. So I got number 1 correct for Verstappen. Number 3 was correct as Perez. Number 5 was correct as Sainz. I incorrectly predicted Norris in second and Leclerc in third, or in fourth. So I got 3 out of 5, right? I think that's pretty good.
That's better than what I did.
How did you do?
So I predicted Max in first. I think that's a safe bet for the rest of the races for the year. I had Checo in second, Carlos in third. I think that was just a wish and a hope, and based on how Carlos has performed the first half of the first 4 races of the year. So got that one wrong. Yep. Fourth, I had Fernando. Fifth, I had Lando. So way off on that Lando prediction. But Lando, I feel like it was almost like his redo for messing up the sprint on Saturday off the line.
It absolutely was.
Yeah.
How do you feel about teams and how we got to this race condition because they could change the car between sprint and the race?
I have to say there were a few teams that did really well, I think, with adjusting their car from the sprint into qualifying into the race. I mean, the parc fermé after qualifying, but I think there were a few teams that did a really good job adjusting to the track. You know, teams were, and some drivers were saying they were concerned about only having one FP session, but I actually think the sprint worked out a lot better for select teams. So in my mind, those standout teams were McLaren and Haas. And I'm not just saying it because you're a Haas fan, but McLaren was a standout. Haas was a standout. I think Ferrari did okay. I think they could have done better. They have done better in past races. So, not sure what those adjustments look like from the sprint to the race, but definitely McLaren. And I really truly believe Piastri would have finished a lot higher if he didn't have that
Contact.
Contact. Thank you.
Yes.
If he didn't have that contact in the race. So it would have been great to see, but of course that's the sport and those things happen. But so freaking happy for Lando getting second on the podium. Yes. And like he said, when he comes in second to Max, he feels like he's won, which is awesome for him. So,
which basically in this year, in this Red Bull era of car, basically it is to most people, including I think Perez to a degree when he comes in second to Max, because I mean no one's touching him or his pace.
No,
I would definitely agree with those standouts. McLaren did so well. Lando Norris saying in his post-race interview he had a bet with his engineer that he was going to finish 35 seconds behind for the Ferraris because they were not confident. He wasn't confident in how well they had adapted to this race, this format. Which, yes, crazy to think. I think he was maybe over exaggerating the 35-second part, but yeah, they were much better than he was expecting them to be, which is insane to think. So yeah, I think that was a huge standout.
He only finished 14 seconds behind Max.
Yeah.
Which in the first, what was yesterday? Yesterday, I think, was a gap of 13 seconds.
Yeah.
In the 19 laps that they completed yesterday, which is like full out racing. So,
and I mean, like there were safety cars, so it did bunch the pool up. I think Max could have been much further ahead, but like he was just behind Max. In this era of Formula One, just behind Max, 13 seconds. Ferrari, some of the drivers saying they weren't super happy with how they performed. They were quite behind Norris. They managed to get 4th and 5th, so not that crazy bad of a result, but they were hoping to get more out of it. Fred Vasseur saying they need to do some work on the race pace that they had this weekend. So they didn't do too bad. Maybe could have adapted a little bit better. And then for Haas, I will just say it's a good year to be a Haas fan.
Yes.
If we had been talking about this last year, we would not be talking about Haas as much, even though I love them. But they're having some really good races, some good standouts. Of course, they still want to do more and get closer. They can really only, and Nico said, they can only really get points when something happens to one of the top 5 teams. But they managed to do it again. They pulled out another 10th place finish, which gives them a point.
Yes.
So really good for them.
Yes. Yeah, it was super exciting. And to your point, I feel like I say exciting every time. I feel like as an F1 fan, you can find excitement in any part of anything. But it was really great to see a Haas in the points in the top 10. Because usually that would be like an Aston Martin spot. Taking that 10th point. I'm not saying consistently they're in 10th, but like the Aston, there's usually 2 Aston, it's usually like Red Bull, Ferrari, Mercedes, McLaren, and Aston Martin. So it was really refreshing to see Haas up there. Nico fought. Like Nico drove exceptionally well this weekend or today. Today, this morning. Drove exceptionally well, held his place. I think there were a few places where he had to let some drivers through, like Lewis, just because the cars, you can't compete with those 2 cars as much as Lewis said the car is slow. But I was so happy for Haas to see them in the points again. Yeah.
And just to see, like, yes, they're fighting for those kind of leftover points when a mistake happens. But to see Haas go from they were in 10th, like last position in the constructors last year, to being in the position to fight for those leftover points is such a huge jump. And if I had the ability to, I would love to go and talk to the whole team about like what's happening this year.
Yes.
Like clearly AO has had some influence on that. But there's some things going really well for them. So I'd love to know more.
Maybe they'll have like an ask us anything on their socials, and then you can just say, what's up? What's going on? What's working this year?
That. Yes, exactly.
So keep your eyes peeled for that one, Nadia.
Will do. Absolutely.
So I know we didn't have this on our list for today, but also Fernando off that line is phenomenal to watch. Like that veteran he was another standout for me between off the line, the way he held his position throughout the race, his race pace, his overtaking throughout the race was just phenomenal. And then the way that he saved the car on that last corner late in the race, where Carlos actually spun out, did his J turn. Like Fernando just he's 42 years old and he is racing like he's in peak form. I love it.
Like it's amazing. And yes, totally shows his experience getting off the line, like going and being able to do that week in and week out. I think so we talked about the 3 people we thought could maybe pull off what Carlos did last time was Carlos, Fernando, which had happened in the same corner. He also did really great, stayed on
a lot better
and stayed still fighting that he gained a position like within the lap after that happened. Yeah.
Like right after it, like recovered right into DRS. Yes,
exactly. So near the end of the race, we always say we hope everyone stays safe and does fine. But I was really hoping our third prediction would come true, that we would see if Max could execute a spin out at that corner and still continue.
Yes.
Just purely for the fact that Norris was in second. And if he could have pulled off a race win this weekend, we would have started this podcast by like probably screaming. I would be so excited. But yes, we didn't see. I'm sure Max can still make that work, but we didn't get to see it this weekend.
Well, didn't he do like a little like wavy, like he did a little weave in his last on one corner, or like a drift almost in one corner in the last lap because
he was racing the last lap like he was like fighting somebody the whole time and he was all by himself. But I mean, for Max, you have to have fun somewhere.
Exactly.
Also, Max's first pit stop, they pitted him early and double stacked. So it was him and then Perez right behind. Not a risk they needed to take, but they did. And I half wonder if Max was like, can I pass some cars? I'd love the ability to pass some cars during this race. So pit him. He's in 4th. And of course, he passed everyone really easily.
Of course.
But gave him a little bit of excitement for today.
I never thought of that. But I did. Watching it, you're thinking, Max, you really don't have to pass all 4 of these guys because as soon as they pit, you're in first anyways. So it was kind of fun to see. And to your point, it's some excitement for him because he's likely bored. Also want to shout out another standout. I feel like this race had a lot of standouts, especially for being back after 5 years, which was awesome. The double Red Bull stack pitting. A 2.1, a 2.0, and then a 2.0 and a 1.9 pit stop by Red Bull. Insane. I want to know. They're the pinnacle of excellence in literally everything they do. I would love to know like what the brand expectations are of the people who work for them, what their training looks like for everybody in every role, in every capacity of Red Bull. I would like, I just have, I want to be exposed to that excellence and understand why every single element of Red Bull is so high.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I would just love to understand it.
Yeah.
I don't know if you feel
like
the same way, but
my
it's
like
insane.
all-time dream would be to be able to go and see all of the behind the scenes. How do they do this? How do they execute it? And everyone's role in that execution. For Red Bull, I would also really love to see McLaren, and how that
Yes.
works. But like,
Mm-hmm.
more than anything, like, be great to meet the drivers, be great to meet all of those people. I want to understand how this all
Yes.
comes together. So
Yes.
yes, I totally agree. I would love to be able to be a fly on the wall and see everything that happens
Mm-hmm.
in those teams, back in the factory, at the garage, all of the above.
Everything. Yeah.
Yeah. Like they
They
did
must
for fun on social media a pit stop in the dark last year to see if they could execute on it. I mean, with safety regulations and
of
everything in
course,
place, they were
yes.
safe.
Yeah.
But like, that's crazy to think of.
But maybe that's part of their training too. Like, they just say, okay, what is the most wild pit stop that we can think of? I think it was, I don't know how many years ago it was, but they did a pit stop in zero gravity as well.
Yeah.
So like, the company also has the resources to do these things. Like, I'm
Yeah.
sure if Horner or whoever is head mechanic goes to them and says, hey, we want to try this, I'm sure Red Bull would not say no. Or they would say,
Yeah.
like, why do you want to do this? I'm sure the head mechanic would say, here's why we want to do this.
Yeah.
But when you're a company like Red Bull and you have unlimited funds, unlimited resources for things like this, I'm sure that's probably plays a part in it. But still, you have to have very high expectations and really solid brand standards, and onboarding and training and all of those sorts of things.
And like, you can't do fun, I'm going to call them fun things like that, if you're not consistently executing at the right level. So like, them to be able to, yes, we're executing in a really great way. How do we make this even better? How do we continue to engage in the team and do everything that they need to do? So it's so great. And we've seen many times where pit stops can make or break your race. If you lose a few seconds in a pit stop, you could be done. You could be from second to out of the points in how close the fights are. We've seen that with Kick this year, having some not great pit stops. They had a pretty good pit stop weekend for them. Like, they had a 3-second pit stop.
Yes.
They, I think, had 1 4-second again, but much better than they were doing.
Yeah.
And then I think the other thing to just call out, I don't know if anything will come of it, but when Gasly pitted, his car either slipped off the jack, something happened, and the tire, the car went down without the tire on the back and fell off, hit a mechanic. Mechanic fell. Super dangerous place to be at all times. The mechanic is okay, but I'd be curious to see what sort of thing happens from that, if there's some FIA scrutiny, of course, going in, but if there's anything that results. But yeah, there was lots of pit action questions, things happening this weekend for sure.
Yes. And actually, I think that's a good foray into our next topic, which I think we can begin with Valtteri. And he looked great, was performing well. And then his engine just died. Like, he was having such a good weekend, such a good race. And then his vehicle died. He was okay. Saw a funny meme of him being a passenger princess on the back of the little scooter, which just made me laugh so hard. And and then the question was, based on where he had to retire the car, It was a really high, I don't know if it was a high speed corner, but it was a corner regardless. And if anybody lost their car on that corner while the marshals were there or the volunteers were trying to get that car off the track, it could have been catastrophic. And, there's been a lot of conversation around why wasn't a safety car deployed sooner? Or, the VSC. So I think this kind of plays into the tons of pit stops and then also the penalties that were a result of this incident. I wouldn't even say incident, I would say retirement.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the craziest thing to me was it was still under a double yellow, potentially virtual safety car when Valtteri was out of the vehicle on the track.
Yes.
Like,
yes,
it's just, that's so crazy because, yes, as you said, it was in a corner. The reason he went off where he did is because his engine died. He couldn't turn and he just drove straight into the spot he was in. So such a dangerous place to be, something that everyone is asking questions about. So I'd be curious to see what if anything comes from that, because that safety car should have been deployed much quicker. Absolutely, in my opinion. Yeah.
Well, and also, sorry, I'm going to bring it up. I think between this incident and George being left vulnerable in Australia and not calling red flag, he was so vulnerable in his position. And there was like little to no visibility coming around that corner for the drivers to see and react to George. So, it's really, you really wonder like what's happening with the marshals or the FIA and like why are they delaying calling some of these or making some of these calls. But that's a conversation for another day. But
yeah,
go ahead.
It is down to the race director. I was watching on F1 TV the post-race show, and they made clear the definition, the difference between, it's not stewards who make that call, it's the race director. But both of them are under the FIA, so it is ultimately up to the FIA, the people in charge, to make these decisions. But yes, so concerning because in the world we're in with F1 right now, these drivers have so much control over the car, but it's so easy for something to go wrong and them to lose it. And the potential impact of that loss is way too high to take that risk. So yes, I would like to see these things happen quicker with some more strict like adherence to, let's just put out a safety. It's not going to hurt people by putting out a safety car, red flagging it, whatever, where the risk on the other side is someone getting hit or hurt or injured or whatever that might be. Worse. Right? So yeah. And then into the like I say this so many times, it's a common phrase in our household: safety cars breed incidents, all of the above. So this was the first domino in what ended up being 4 penalties dished out into this race.
Yes. Do you want to go into them, Nadia? You're very passionate about your penalties this year.
I am. And I'll start by just saying every single one handed out this weekend was a 10-second penalty. So I still would like to know if anyone knows or has insight into why all of these penalties are now 10 seconds this year. I'd love to know because it's becoming a trend.
Well, one thing I will tell you, which is interesting, Nadia, you are correct. And I'm looking at penalties that were handed out in 2023. And last year, for causing a collision, there were 5-second penalties handed out last year. So interesting. Causing a collision, 5-second penalty, speeding in pit lane, unsafe rejoin 5-second. The 10-second penalties from last year seem to mostly be from serving a penalty incorrectly, which is interesting, or extreme track limit violations.
Yeah, or like things that were very intentional. And they're handing out 10-second penalties for things that, I mean, the driver reasonably in the vehicle may not be able to know that that's the decision made. Quickly, before I get into a thing that happened that exactly explains that this weekend, I also looked back in 2018 when we were last in China for the Grand Prix, and there were 2 10-second penalties handed out for causing a collision during that race for Verstappen and Gasly, actually. So it just is very odd to me that the last time we were here, it was 10-second penalties again. So something's going on in the penalty department this year.
But Nadia, also, we have consistently seen 10-second penalties handed out all year this year, not just this weekend. So that's also a little bit sus. So I'd love to understand or know why they've been increased, if they have.
Yeah. Because if that's the new normal, great. I just would like to know that that's a new normal. Because right now it doesn't seem normal at all.
No. Well, and especially because the packs are tighter than they've ever been in the past. Right? So even if you're, I don't know, even if you're in the bottom of the pack, like, I don't know, 10 seconds could bring you from like 15th to 20th. Like,
and even depending when in the race it is, a 10-second penalty could drop you from 4th to like 14th. Like it could be so drastic. So whether that's intentional or not, I don't know. I have all the questions.
And if you're in a kick car, that could mean, you know, a place in the top 20 to being lapped potentially twice.
Yes, it could be. Absolutely.
10 seconds plus your long pit stop.
Yeah. And hopefully they're on the upward trend away from that. But yes, it absolutely could. So this weekend, there were 2 safe penalties under the safety car, both for safety car infringement, which were passing another driver. You cannot overtake under a safety car. And one prime example of that was actually Logan Sargent. Nico Hulkenberg was coming out of the pit lane. You have to hit a certain part on the track, and then that determines whether you're in front or behind. And under freeze frame, essentially, is the only way that you were able to determine this. Nico was ahead. Sargent thought he was ahead. Sargent went ahead of Nico. He ended up getting a 10-second penalty for it. But in the vehicle in the moment, there's no way either driver could know who was where. So, I mean, that's up to the teams.
Yes.
But something where...
And he couldn't give it back, right?
No, at that point he couldn't. So, and the stewards are no longer really saying to teams, hey, you need to do this or you're going to get a penalty. They're leaving it up to the teams to make that determination. Maybe not in every case, but that was something they talked about a couple years ago, because teams were constantly radioing in to the stewards saying, this doesn't make sense. Can you please review this? It was a battle led a lot of the times by Christian Horner at Red Bull. But yeah, they basically said, we're not going to call out that you might be getting a penalty as much, if not at all. So it is really up to the teams in these moments to make that decision and then get a penalty or not get a penalty. But this is one where the 10 seconds surprised me, because without a literal freeze frame, you could not tell that he was in the wrong position. So,
right. And even to your point, we think the drivers have visibility that you would have in a regular passenger vehicle. You have barely any visibility. You are so low to the ground. You can't see if you are over track limits. You can't see, like, where, to your point, where your vehicle is in comparison to another. Even lining up at the starting line, the pit exit, like how many times are there pit exit infringements because, you know, they can't see the line. So I also think that, to your point, 10 seconds is a little bit extreme for that. And, you know, can it just be a warning even to begin with?
Yeah.
Because I don't know. I believe in fairness, you know, and like, yes, the rules are very black and white, but at the same time, there are exceptions to the rules quite often that, you know, have much more extreme outcomes than like this circumstance, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know.
When
But I get
something
it.
like this, it's because it's such a questionable call. I agree with you. Like, in a situation where they've made the determination, they're still under safety car, can they just say to the team, you are going to get a penalty because you're not in the right position. You need to switch back immediately. If you don't do within X time, you're getting a penalty. Because right after the safety car, a 10-second penalty is the difference between first and last, honestly, right when you restart again. So yes, a harsh penalty, in my opinion, for that situation.
Especially considering the other incidences that happened during that safety car period, which were much more extreme and also only received a 10-second penalty. Like, of course, we have to talk about the Lance Stroll incident. You know, driving into the back of Danny, you know, seemed like he wasn't paying attention. Don't get me wrong. In the cool down room, Lando told Max it was his fault that incident happened. Lando's not wrong, because Max likes to take off where he's going to have that prime advantage, right? So, you know, and if he slows down drastically, and because the pack is bunched up, they all have to be paying attention to the car in front of them. And you cannot anticipate when he's going to take off, because that causes this sort of incident. So this is actually a super rookie mistake that Lance made, not paying attention. All you have to be doing is looking at the car in front of you. And he couldn't even do that.
And going back to, yes, I agree, this is because of the way Max restarts. To a degree, the blame isn't on him, but the reason they're also so tight and don't want to give even a foot of space between each other is because if Max takes off, being a foot back is the difference between having a great start and not having a great start. In a track where these corners are as tight and as low speed as they are, this sort of thing happening isn't surprising. I think the thing that blows my mind is afterwards, of course, both Lance and Danny both felt it was the other person's fault. But looking back, and Danny said it, looking at Lance on his on-helmet camera, he wasn't looking at Danny. He was looking to the corner and accelerating. When you can see 4 cars in front of you that are all in a line that aren't accelerating, that's just, it doesn't make sense. Something happened, whatever it might be, but that is 100%, in my opinion, on Lance. That he wasn't paying attention the way he should have been, or giving enough credit to the turn that they were in, that didn't make sense for him to do, to the point where like a quarter, if not a third, of Danny's car ended up on Lance's roof.
I know.
Or the hood of his vehicle. So
and then Lance had the audacity to say, "Can you check if my front wing has damage?"
Of course it does. He was on top of your car. Like, just crazy. And the fact that then he was able to continue the race and do, like, I mean,
and
he
Danny
didn't do great.
couldn't.
He didn't get points, but Danny had to retire because of that whole situation.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think we may see some continued, if these two are near each other on a track anytime in the future, there will be drama. I am calling it right now. Because afterwards they were both sharing words with the media. Lance did not have nice things to say about Danny in the moment, blamed Danny for the incident. And when Danny found out about it, he was being interviewed. No, exactly.
Danny had nowhere to go.
No, nowhere at all. And it caused some chaos behind too, because then also
Yes.
Nico was called to the stewards to talk about he overtook those two because they were colliding under safety car. And I mean, he didn't get a penalty for it because I mean, the other alternative he would have crashed into them as well,
Exactly.
which makes no sense. But
Yeah.
it was just pure chaos, all caused by Lance not paying attention in a Formula One car on track, which is just crazy.
Yeah, I honestly, Danny saying fuck that guy, I would be saying that too. Like,
oh yeah,
sorry. And Lance having the audacity to say this guy braked in front of me. Like literally if he was looking at the apex, he would have seen the other two cars braking in the corner because they were on the apex braking. So whether like you can daydream when you're driving your passenger vehicle on the street in a city or a highway, you can't daydream when you're driving an F1 car or whatever he was doing
under safety car conditions. Like, no. And part of the reason of this too is Fernando was in front of them. His car locked up going into the turn, which does cause people to brake more quickly than they necessarily would have. But you have to know that the possibility that that's going to happen is quite high in this area. Like the fact that they haven't been to this track, like none of that is an excuse. Yeah, just craziness. And I wouldn't be surprised to see some drama between those two in the next while.
I can't wait. I actually forgot that Fernando locked up in that corner, and that's what caused all of this.
Right? Like so many things just contributed to this whole situation. He wasn't brake testing. The way Max restarts, Fernando having a lockup, that corner being so tight of a turn, and under safety car. Like so many things contributed to this, but it could have been avoided, at least to the degree that it happened, by him just paying attention. Yeah. So
Lance. Yeah. I do feel bad for Danny though, because he was having a good drive, and you know, it probably felt like it was his day to prove himself, and it was all fucked up because of Lance.
Yeah. and with Danny as well too, he also got a penalty after he retired from the race because he also overtook Nico. What is with this Nico being involved in both of these, but to no fault of his own? He overtook Nico under safety car. Danny thought that he was entitled to the place back because Nico had passed him on an earlier lap, or in that same lap. But the FIA ruled, no, it was Nico's place. You overtook under safety car. So because he didn't finish the race, he couldn't serve his penalty. He will start the sprint in Miami with a 3-place grid penalty.
Yeah.
Which I'm also sure he's not happy about with this whole situation.
No. When it rains, it pours, especially this year for Danny. So, well, it'll just, hopefully it'll inspire him to qualify a lot higher during sprint qualifying. Who knows? Who's to say what'll happen?
The like one bright side I would take if I was him is it's at least in the sprint, not in the race. So, I mean, depending where he qualifies, right now where they're at, they wouldn't be fighting for the top 8 anyways. So, I mean, it may or may not hurt or impact their race. We'll see.
So lots to unpack there. The other interesting thing, after reading the FIA documents that we discovered, is that Lance actually has 7 penalty points as well. And drivers only get, I believe, 12 per year, per 12-month period. So Lance is quick. I don't know when his old points expire, but Lance is quickly accumulating a lot of penalty points for a 12-month period. So again, curious to see how he performs, and if he's more cautious, if he's not. I mean, we had a big conversation around his performance yesterday, but yeah, interesting to see. And those penalty points, oof, mama.
Yeah.
When to get 12, in trouble.
Because you have to sit out of a race once you get 12. Is that correct? Yes. Which could be a big thing for Aston Martin, where they're fighting. And the other thing that is happening with Aston Martin is that extra point position, the 10th position that is being fought over by midfield teams, is more often than not this year because Lance is not in the top 10, where ideally he should be based on Fernando's performance in a similar, if not same car. So could be very interesting to see what happens.
Yes. Yeah. Were there more penalties you wanted to discuss, or just the 2 10-second penalties? There was more?
There was one more penalty.
Okay.
So that was 3 out of the 4. The fourth one involved Kevin Magnussen.
No.
Right. You may be surprised by my opinion on this one, though.
Okay.
Because yes, I love Kevin. He's great. He's my favorite driver. You all know that. However, I think this one may have been partially his fault. And the penalty was handed out. It shouldn't have been a 10-second penalty. It should have been a 5-second penalty based on past rules. But they were going around a corner. Yuki was ahead of him going into the corner. Yuki took a wider line. Kevin took a tighter line, ended up hitting the backside of Yuki's car and spun Yuki out. Then Yuki also was not able to finish the race. He had to leave the race, not finish it, based off of the damage to it.
Oh, yes, their tires. They both had, was it both of them whose tires Yuki's kind of exploded?
Yes.
And then K-Mag had to go to the pits.
Yes. K-Mag did pit after that. But yes, both of them had some tire damage because they impacted basically tire on tire. So yeah, it was, from either driver's perspective, you could have argued that one of them had the turn and one of them didn't. But the angle that was taken, I understand the steward's decision to say that it was Kevin's responsibility in that corner. So he did also get a 10-second penalty in the race.
But again, causing a collision last year would have been a 5-second penalty. So
it would have been.
I feel like we need to do a little bit more research into why the penalty lengths are so different this year. So that will be our homework. So we'll do the research so you don't have to.
Yes, exactly.
And then I think, what was last on our list for today? Sorry. The sleep deprivation is really getting to me.
Right? Yes. Any other honorable mentions from the weekend? We talked about quite a few of them already.
Yes. There's one more I have.
Yes.
As much as I hate hearing him complain time and time again about how bad the car is, how slow the car is, Lewis did start in 18th and finished in 8th or 9th?
In 9th.
In 9th.
Yes.
So, of course, we had a few retirements. We had a safety car. But regardless, he went from 18th to 9th, made up 9 places. If you were to say, because of retirements, it's 5 places, but still, he did a great job. I mean, you kind of saw, as much as he was in the middle of the pack, you kind of saw the old Lewis, right? With his overtaking, with his battles. So it was really nice to see, but to be honest, and again, unpopular opinion, I'm honestly getting sick of hearing him say how bad the car is. and I'm sure his engineers are too. But he did have a good race today with those spots. I think Charles also did. Again, I can't remember every single element. But he also had a good race. And it's interesting because I feel like him and Lewis are going to be great teammates next year because they both love to complain.
Yeah, that could be very interesting for all of the engineers and the team principal, Fred Vasseur, at Ferrari next year. Because that could be an interesting combination between the two of them.
Yeah.
Because I think even though you said unpopular opinion, I don't know how unpopular that opinion is becoming, because it's every race, there's something going on. I get that the car's not where they want it to be. Like, we've talked about it before. I won't go into it. Clearly, Russell's doing something different compared to Lewis. It's just so tough for me. Yes, he made up essentially 9 positions, 8 positions. It's hard for me to say, yes, he had a really good race when he is so negative about everything that's happening. So we saw him in the sprint. He had a much better weekend than he has in the past while. But the fact that he's consistently still complaining, I'm tired of it. Yeah.
Oh, I agree. And even George, just so in comparison, George started 8th and he finished in 6th. And that pack of like 3 to 7 was like a consistent battle throughout the race. So George being able to hold his place and make up 2 spots, again, says a lot about what he's able to extract from the car versus what Lewis is. So a little bit questionable there. So as much as I don't want to give him credit, Lewis does deserve credit for his driving this week or this morning.
I'm yes, as I said, frustrated to continue hearing these things. I'm holding further thoughts or analysis into his level of performance until I see him at Ferrari and see what he can do with that car compared to Charles. So we'll see, but I'm paying more attention to how George is doing at Mercedes this year than anything Hamilton's doing on the track for the most part.
Definitely.
But also, as you said, like with everything that happened this weekend, another great weekend of overtakes, just in general, like people fighting all over the place. Right near the end of the race, Kevin and Lance were fighting for the last 2 positions in the entire race. But such a great battle between the two of them.
Yes.
So regardless where it is on the track, like there is some great battles happening this year, taking Max out of the equation.
Of course.
So good racing to see just overall.
Yeah, I agree. It was a really, really fun race to watch. And luckily nobody got hurt again. So a lot of excitement without any sort of, big drama happening outside of the Lance Danny situation, which will be fun to watch unfold throughout the rest of the year. So
yes, it will.
Yeah. Do you have any other honorable mentions?
No other honorable mentions. The only other thought I had written down was we talked about potential of rain, which was very little. I thought it was going to be a little bit more exciting when Max said before the race started, it's starting to drizzle out here. I got excited. Nothing happened.
Yes,
so no rain for the race in China this year. So we still do not have a wet race this year.
And that's okay because I feel like Spa never disappoints.
True.
Sorry to say.
True.
Even when Ryan and I went there on a random weekend to watch an endurance race, it rained and it poured and it just felt right that it was typical Spa weather. So I'm sure there will be some in Spa or even Netherlands. Netherlands is also pretty notorious for being rainy. So yeah, we'll see. But before we go, Nadia, what's in your cup?
I'm drinking vanilla hazelnut Zavita coffee again today.
Same as yesterday.
A good classic this weekend.
Yes.
Of course, with brown sugar.
Yes. Yum, yum.
How about you?
Oh, okay, I'm going to flip it around. What do you think I'm drinking? It's 3:30 in the afternoon.
I think you're drinking Earl Grey. Oh my gosh, something pigs tea. I can't remember the first word all of a sudden.
Tea pigs.
Tea pigs. That's the word. It's the description of the drink you're drinking. Earl Grey tea pigs tea.
No,
Am I correct?
fooled you. No, just plain hot water. Plain hot water. But
that's
I will tell you, you know what though, Nadia? You were correct. That is what I was drinking while I was watching the race at 3:30 in the morning. I brewed myself a cup of the Tea Pigs Earl Grey instead of a coffee because I knew I wanted to go back to sleep. And it was like perfect. It kept me awake for the first hour. And then that last half hour was the crash. And that's okay.
Yeah. You'll probably be proud of me for this. The race was at like 1 a.m. to 3 a.m. my time. I did not drink coffee at all.
I am shocked.
From like 9:30 p.m. on, which is very shocking for me. I just had water during the race.
Good for you.
And I managed to stay awake. So I was a little bit happy with myself last night because then I went right to sleep after the race.
See, it's because there was so much excitement happening during the race. You actually didn't need your coffee. You didn't know that at 9 o'clock, but that's what actually happened.
Exactly.
Well, thanks again. And I guess our next connection will be for Miami. Miami Sprint, Miami qualifying, and it'll be, to your point, at a normal time for us, which will be such a treat.
First North American race of the year.
Yes.
It will be great.
Yep. And we'll see you in 2 weeks then, Nadia.
Sounds good. Have a good couple weeks.
Yeah, you too.
Thank you for joining us this week at the Chicane Cafe. Follow us on Instagram at the Chicane Cafe. Our podcast is available wherever you get your podcasts. And for a video version of our pod, watch us on our YouTube channel at the Chicane Cafe. And remember to hit that subscribe button.